tricky at first, but once you understand what's happening, it's a little bit easier to find out. So this next question is related to a template that was downloaded from a third-party website. And the site for this, if you're used to plugins, you probably have used this and done this at one point, and you might have heard of this company. But the plugin is actually called MShatter, and it's from a company called Motion VFX. And great company. They make a lot of really great templates and great things. But when you're working with a template that's third party, you can run into some interesting issues. And that's actually what happened here with this template. So what this template is, if I scroll down, we can see some of the effects. And let's see if we can scrub through the preview here. What this template, I'm going to mute it because we don't need that audio. But what this template does is it shows these little shattered pieces of glass. And it shatters them, animates them, and then you can have text moving across. And, just makes sense, right? Just shattered glass, kind of a cool little effect and filter there. And I'm a big fan of it. I thought it was pretty cool because the person reached out to me and was like, hey, this is what I'm using. And I'm like, that's a cool feature. Here's the problem, though. Like, that's what it's supposed to look like, right? But what it actually looked like was this. It had just these letters with the background on there of the video it was cracking, and it didn't actually look the way it was supposed to. Because what it should look like is this. When you put in the picture, it should show that picture in the little shards of glass. That's really what that template is supposed to do. But that's not what it did. So this one was kind of interesting. I was like, okay, what's going on with this one? So when you get a template, which I can right-click or just select the template here, and I can go up to the, in this case it's a generator, so I can go up to the generators tab, and I can see all the various drop zones, right? So I'm like, okay, maybe we did something wrong, we put a wrong drop zone in it, but it just has the well to put it in there, and there's also a background. I didn't add any background, it's just a gray background there. You could disable that if you didn't want that. But there's no controls. If you dig through all this, there's no controls to change it. You can make some adjustments and it's the video, and it changes where it is in the letters. And this is where it's kind of weird, because now I'm like, okay, what's going on with it? So this is a template that was created or designed with Motion. So if I go into my titles and generators sidebar, I can actually go in and see that, that shatter template. And this is one that the person that was having an issue reached out to me because the other support guys over at Motion VFX weren't fast enough in responding, and I was available, so why not? So here's the template, and I can see here if I go up here on the template itself, it still has those letters, HICN, and so it doesn't really tell me anything. I just know that in the template itself, it's broken. And if you have Motion, on these templates, you can actually right-click on them and say Open in Motion. If you don't have Motion, it's a little unfortunate because it's harder to inspect this and actually figure out what's going wrong. But because I have Motion, this is what I did. I said, hey, send me one of those templates, and I'll open it up. I'll try to find out what's happening. So I opened it in Motion, and this is what came up. And most of the time, I don't care about fonts in that much detail. A lot of times there's a missing font, and I'm like, okay, maybe he did something on his system, whatever, and it's not there. But in this case, the font missing is actually what was causing the problem, because it's really clever. What they've done here to build this template is they've actually used a font to simulate or emulate the shards of glass. So that was what the problem was. If I look through all the layers to see where those pieces of glass were listed, I can go down here. There's a shatter group, and there's the 4 different shatters, and they're all set to a letter. I can go to the inspector. These are just text pieces, right? So I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. But then I found out that normally when you get this template, it includes a font. And for whatever reason, when the person installed it, that font didn't come over. So I went in, I found the font. Here it is on the desktop. I'm just going to double click on the font. Here's my shatter font. I'm going to install that font. And if I look at the font, it looks really weird because it's not actually a font. It is a font, but it's not text that you would write. It's just each letter is represented by a design that is actually the piece of glass. That's actually the shard of glass. So if I switch back over, I'm going to quit Motion here because we don't need that. But if I switch back over to Final Cut and I look at my template here, It's still messed up there because it's missing that font. So I'm going to control click and say open in motion. Sometimes you'll have to go and reinstall these, but if I reopen this in motion, ideally it's going to show that the font is no longer missing. So let's see when this loads up, we'll see what we get. So now notice the shards of glass are showing instead of the letters, right? So if I select one of these shatters, I go in the inspector, it just shows the letter N, because in the inspector it always shows whatever the text is, just kind of the default text here. But in the picture, I'm actually seeing the line of text. If I change this from an N to an M, looking over on the right here, this is where it's changing. It's changing the shard that it's using because they actually created a font that generates each of those shapes, and that's what ends up creating your shard of glass. So I thought this was really cool. I think it was a very clever way of designing that template and building it. And then just like before, if it doesn't update right away in Final Cut, just quit and relaunch Final Cut. Most things do update pretty quickly, but usually when I'm doing the live stream here, it's just accessing too many things because I'm recording it and doing a couple other things. So if it doesn't update right away, quit, relaunch. It should update it and show it to us now. If not, we'd uninstall and then reinstall that app. But that is the kind of what's going on. And that question came from Jake, who reached out via Instagram and was just struggling with it. And it makes sense, right? Who would expect that shards of glass in a template is not working because a font's not installed on your computer? You know, it's just a very bizarre problem to have. So it's not updating, which is fine. We could just, it did update. It's not updating the thumbnails, which is fine. It will do those eventually. But yeah, now you can see in our viewer here, it has the shards of glass in there the way that it's supposed to look, and it's showing my delicious dessert back there instead of something else. So that was a really cool question to go through, just for me as a technical person breaking it apart. And then the next question comes from Marcus, also on Instagram. And what Marcus did is he added the black hole transition, which is a transition included inside of Final Cut. But he added the black hole transition, and the